And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another episode of Podcast on the Brink, your weekly dose of Indiana University basketball news and discussion. I'm your host, Jerod Morris. Podcast on the Brink is a joint production of the Assembly Call and Inside the Hall. For complete coverage of IU basketball, visit assemblycall.com and insidethehall.com. Hey, you have probably heard about Blue Apron, which is the fresh ingredient and recipe delivery service that helps chefs of all levels cook incredible meals at home. They take care of the menu planning and the shopping, providing you with fresh, locally sourced ingredients in pre-measured quantities so that all you have to do is cook and enjoy. And here at Podcast on the Brink, we've actually launched an affiliate relationship with Blue Apron. And so if you've been thinking about trying Blue Apron, go to insidethehall.com/Blue Apron, and you can sign up and actually get $30 off of your first set of meals, and we'll actually get a small commission. So it's a great way to try Blue Apron, a great way to support Podcast on the Brink. And if you stick around for the end of the episode, I'll actually tell you about my personal experience with Blue Apron over these past couple weeks and some of the fun that my wife and I have had making meals there. So just wanted to put that out there real quick. InsideTheHall.com/Blue Apron. On this week's edition of Podcast on the Brink, I fly solo as Alex has the week off, and I welcome Brendan Quinn back to Podcast on the Brink. Brendan, of course, covers the Michigan Wolverines and the Michigan State Spartans for The Athletic. He has been a guest before, always very insightful with his commentary. And so we talk with him about the Michigan State Spartans in advance of Indiana's game up in East Lansing on Friday. Why has Michigan State been struggling? What has been the template that teams like Ohio State and Michigan have used to beat Michigan State? And what might Indiana need to do to get an upset up there on Friday night? All of that and more, plus some general Big Ten talk with Brendan Quinn here on this edition of Podcast on the Brink. Buying tickets to sports and concerts can be complicated and confusing, but there is a better way to buy, and that is with SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the smartest, easiest way to get tickets to every type of live event. Whether you're searching for a last-minute deal, planning a night out, or need to find the perfect gift, SeatGeek helps you find the best seats at the best prices, fully guaranteed. There is nothing quite like seeing your favorite team or musician in person, and SeatGeek will get you closer to the action for a great value. I have the SeatGeek app on my phone. I can vouch that it is by far the easiest way that I have found to shop for tickets. I can be anywhere, and with just a few taps, I can instantly find seats. I'm planning on doing that with my wife. We have a 17-month-old, but we're planning some date nights out, and one of the things we're going to do is look for some musicians that we want to see, and SeatGeek will be the first place that we go to look for concert tickets here in Dallas where we live, so hopefully we can find some, because we know if they're there and if there are good prices, then we will find them on SeatGeek, because SeatGeek is designed to make your ticket buying experience easier than ever. SeatGeek saves you time and money by searching multiple ticket sites to compare prices and help you find amazing deals. And best of all, Podcast on the Brink listeners get $20 off of your first SeatGeek purchase. Just download the SeatGeek app and enter the promo code BRINK today, BRINK, for $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. All right, well, I am pleased to be joined on this week's edition of Podcast on the Brink by Brendan Quinn, a return guest who has been with us before. He, of course, covers Michigan and Michigan State men's basketball for The Athletic. Brendan, welcome back to Podcast on the Brink.
Thank you for having me, and I am especially glad to be on without Alex so that we can, really talk shop and with no funny business.
That's right. Yeah, Alex's kids had a snow day today, so he is playing dad duty, which I know well. So he's not able to join us. And I just want to hit it off by asking you how things are going with The Athletic. I know, I continue to recommend that to folks, even though the coverage of IU basketball isn't that expansive over there. The coverage that you have of Michigan, Michigan State, and some of the other more general Big Ten coverage is really, really good. And for me, someone who, really just focuses on basketball, I found it to be well worth the investment.
Yeah, as we grow, the coverage grows, and we're able to really cover Michigan and Michigan State the way that I do it, because we have a local site in Detroit. It is a hub, if you will. But our national college coverage is expanding, so the Indiana's always a story, so I'm sure we have 4 full-time national writers, kind of headed by Seth Davis, and including Dane O'Neill and Brian Hamilton and C.L. Brown, Sam Bassini, names who I'm sure most of your listenership are familiar with. Who they've been through Bloomington. I'm sure they'll come back through, but yeah, it's been great. It's been a great fit for me personally. I couldn't ask for a better home, a place that kind of lets me do things the way that I want to do it. And it feels like it's weird. I keep saying it's like a prolonged honeymoon period, and this isn't just a gush about my job for the sake of like my bosses or anything. It's just being like genuine. It's been this extended honeymoon period, but now it's going on like 8 months, and I'm like, well, is this just what it is? So knock on wood, but it's been great. It's been great. They let me write as long as I want, as much as I want, and I can't ask for anything more than that.
Oh, that is great to hear. So let's talk a little bit. Obviously, we're having you on this week because Indiana and Michigan State play a big game on Friday night. Before we dive into some specifics about Michigan State, I want to talk with you a little bit just about the Big Ten in general, because the conventional wisdom coming into the season was obviously that Michigan State would just kind of blow through the Big Ten on its way to the Final Four, and Purdue and Minnesota and Northwestern and maybe Michigan and Maryland would battle for second place, and the rest of the conference would be a big pile of mush. And through 6 games, that isn't really what has happened. So how surprised are you generally by how the first third of the Big Ten season has played out?
I mean, Ohio State is certainly, I'm still trying to kind of wrap my head around what is happening there and how good they are. And Dylan Burkhart and I have gone back a little bit back and forth this week about, he's high on them, and I'm saying I'm not ready to buy, but all they keep doing is impressing. When I was at their win over Michigan and I was at their win over Michigan State, both of those in Columbus, and they have a lot of pieces, and Kate Bates-Diop is as good as anyone's playing in the league. It's going to be very interesting to watch them. But I've been a little bit surprised by Michigan. I picked them 4th in the league. I think I was a little bit higher on them than possible, but they are further ahead than I anticipated. And they don't look like what I thought they were going to look like. I was very high on Jerron Simmons coming into the year, and he's a complete non-factor, whereas Xavier Simpson is slowly growing into kind of a revelation of sorts at the point guard position for Michigan. So, yeah, there are surprises, and then a lot of things are kind of going as anticipated, but who could have really anticipated what happened at Minnesota and things like that. So it's a weird year, but I feel like they're all weird years. I mean, Texas Tech is a top 5 team in the country right now. Like, it's just that's college basketball. I go in making these predictions, and I'm always so thoroughly confident that I have it figured out, and then I'm proven to be an idiot again, and that's okay. That's what makes it a lot of fun. But I'm certainly glad to be covering 2 teams, Michigan and Michigan State, who are still very much relevant and have very interesting years ahead of them.
Well, and those 2 teams obviously played this past weekend, and a lot of people were shocked, I think, by the result of that game in East Lansing. I know I was. I didn't get a chance to watch the full game, but I tuned in with about 7-8 minutes left, and I mean, Michigan just controlled it down the stretch, and it was really surprising. And, you wrote after the game that there was really nothing outlandish about the Wolverines' performance. It's not like they shot, crazy or something like that. They just had a great scouting report and a good strategy, and they executed it to a T in a tough road environment and got the win. What did Michigan do in that game that a team like Indiana might be able to use as a template to try and spring their own upset on Friday night?
Well, so Michigan State has lost 2 of its last 3, and it was to Ohio State and Michigan. And the unifying factor in those 2 games are defense. And both had really sound plans. And, a lot of that includes doubling down on Nick Ward and kind of just disrupting the offense from there. But at the same time, Michigan State's guard play has not been at a high level in recent weeks. Cassius Winston and Joshua Langford, and some of that is defensive because Michigan, unlike years past, where you would think they need to go make 14 threes to beat Michigan State at Breslin. Well, this time they are a defensive team that most people have not seen from Michigan, certainly at any point in the Beeline era. This is a team with Xavier Simpson, who is a high level defensive point guard, and Charles Matthews, who is an athletic, versatile defender on the wing. Who he just stuck to Miles Bridges the whole game, all 40 minutes. And that last 8 minutes that you referenced, Miles Bridges was nowhere to be found because I think he was just worn out by going up against Charles Matthews every single time down the floor. They run him through motion and run him through motion and run him through motion, and Matthews just never left him. And he was out. He was out of it. So, it was defensive on both sides of those games, and they double down on Ward. They guard the perimeter. That's what it takes. And you would know better than me how capable Indiana is of a defensive performance like that. But for a while there, Michigan State looked unbeatable during that 14-game winning streak, and now they look pretty vulnerable. There are things that you can pinpoint, but I think it's still an elite team in the country. I think Tom Izzo probably can figure out things like defending a ball screen, so they're going to figure it out. I still think they are a Final Four team, and who knows from there. But right now, I would say Indiana's probably getting them a little bit at a good time, but they also have 5 days off to stew over a loss to Michigan, so there's also a chance that they come out with a fire hose.
Yeah, well, that was kind of my thought watching the game. I was like, okay, so on the one hand, Michigan State's losing, and they've lost 2 out of 3. They're vulnerable, and Michigan's using kind of a defensive template. And in this bizarro Big Ten season, Indiana and Michigan, 2 teams known for their offense, their better than expected play has been driven by defense because Indiana's played much better defense the last 3 games. So I'm thinking on the one hand, this is a good thing, but then on the other hand, Tom Izzo has 5 days, to kind of get these guys going. In situations like this, with Tom Izzo, when his team maybe has a poor performance or a couple of poor performances stacked together, and then they have 4 or 5 days off, do they usually come out, pretty much ready to go and kind of take care of business that next time out? Or do you think that these struggles may linger a little bit and give Indiana a chance Friday night?
Well, I mean, Michigan State hasn't been making shots, so I can't predict that that's going to be something that lingers. I have no idea because they went 3 for 13 against Michigan. 2 weeks before that, they made 15 threes against Maryland. So,
yeah.
Reality is probably somewhere in the middle. I would think that's probably far more likely for the game against Indiana, but I think they are going to adjust some things in this week off. I'm actually just coming from a half-hour-long press conference with Tom Izzo in East Lansing where he talked about they're looking at some adjustments and that teams are going smaller on them, and that's been giving them some issues. So they are going to probably need to respond rotation-wise. The question that I have and that a lot of people have is whether that means possibly moving Jaren Jackson to the 5 and what that might look like, because that could potentially put Miles Bridges back at the 4, where everyone thinks he's more natural fit at this level. If they did that, what might that look like? But everything has a residual effect, and the equal reaction to that would be, okay, well now, what do you do with Nick Ward? He's the most productive offensive player in the league when he's out there getting looks. You're going to sit him? Is that what that means? Or you're going to play Matt McQuaid for 30 minutes? Is that what you want? That's what I think are some of the questions that they have to face this week. And it'll be very interesting to see how they respond. I don't think he's ripping up the grand plan, the master plan, and starting over by any means. But it did sound like from his press conference today, you will probably see some different looks from State that maybe you haven't seen here recently.
Looking at Michigan State stats, especially on KenPom, and you look at Nick Ward's efficiency, and I mean, he's remarkably efficient, and yet he's playing fewer than 50% of the minutes. And part of that, obviously it looks like it's the fact that he fouls a decent amount. But it sounds like part of it also may be something similar to what Indiana was dealing with Deron Davis, where despite being efficient on the offensive end, Indiana was really struggling defensively in certain matchups with Deron. And so when he wasn't really scoring at a high level, they were really struggling with him on the floor. And the defensive improvement has really taken off since Deron went out. Is that has that kind of been the story with Nick Ward, or why isn't he playing the kind of minutes that you would think a guy with that level of efficiency and production would be getting?
It's a large combination of foul trouble. Izzo, whether he's in foul trouble or not, typically subs him out at the 4-minute mark just for conditioning purposes and making sure that he's not sucking wind out there. He's in better shape than he was last year, but he's not exactly, go run up and down for 35 minutes kind of athlete. So it's those two things. And occasionally, defensive issues are certainly pretty apparent, notably in the ball screen. When he gets out in kind of no man's land, 18 feet out, he can overplay himself out of position. And against Michigan, he played, 10 minutes or so, and he just was a terrible matchup in, Michigan's high ball screen stuff, which I'm sure all you guys are familiar with. They can make a lot of teams look pretty silly out there at times, but, Izzo actually blamed it on his guards for just not defending well enough and putting Nick in a tough spot. But at the same time, he still took Ward out of the game. So, I would anticipate Nick Ward's going to play 18 to 22 minutes against Indiana. It's probably a safe bet on Friday, and that's pretty typical. And the thing is that he can go get 17 and 8 in those 20 minutes.
Yeah. I saw you tweet out that Tom Izzo said that he's got to get better play out of the guys that he knows can play better. Who in particular was he referring to there? Hey, you will hear Brendan's answer in just a second. I promise we'll get to it, but I do need to hop in here and talk about our friends at Hoosier Proud, HoosierProud.com. They are an Indiana-based T-shirt and apparel company that is by Hoosiers, for Hoosiers, and we've been telling you about all the reasons why you need to go check out Hoosier Proud. And those reasons remain. The most important reason why you would want to check out any apparel company or T-shirt company is because of their designs. And Hoosier Proud has some really unique, interesting designs, whether you want Inside the Hall or Assembly Call T-shirts, or their officially licensed Indiana gear, football-themed shirts, basketball-themed shirts, soccer-themed shirts. They've got a lot of different options there. The long-sleeve Script Indiana tee is my personal favorite, and the one that I bought over winter break that I really like. And they also have just some really cool designs inspired by unique elements of the Hoosier State. So something else to look at. But a bunch of designs, something for everybody if you have roots in the Hoosier State over at HoosierProud.com. And then also the philanthropy. They support Indiana-based charities, so you will be helping to support Indiana-based charities when you purchase from them. And our friends at Hoosier Proud are really generous with our audience at Assembly Call, with you guys here at Podcast on the Brink. So when you go to HoosierProud.com, use the promo code BRINK, BRINK, and you will get 15% off of your entire order. So that's not just Inside the Hall shirts if you purchase those, or just Indiana university shirts. It's anything that you buy there. The whole order is 15% off. So again, go to HoosierProud.com, use the promo code BRINK, BRINK, and get 15% off. All right, now here is Brendan Quinn's answer to my question about who Tom Izzo was talking about when he said that he knows that he has to get better play out of the guys that he knows can play better. Here's that answer.
Yeah, that's Cassius Winston. It's Joshua Langford. It's Miles Bridges. These guys, they got talent. They got talent at all spots. But Cassius Winston kind of comes and goes with the tide sometimes. So does Joshua Langford, and Miles Bridges, for as much as he can do, and he's in a tough spot because there's a constant conversation of can he dominate and what would that look like. But he doesn't need to be taking 20 shots a game, but he also can't go 8 minutes without taking a shot. It doesn't need to be an extreme. It just needs to be more. He needs to be more aggressive going to the basket. He's averaging like 2.7 free throw attempts per game. That just doesn't work. I mean, he's 6'7", 220 pounds, and can drive and can use his body and can use his physicality and can attack the rim and can get out and run. Like, there's no reason that he shouldn't be taking 8 free throws a game. He should be living on the line, especially because he's like an 88% free throw shooter.
Yeah.
There are times where he wants to set his feet and shoot threes, and he's attempting like 6 threes per game, but he's only shooting like 32%. So he's taking low, efficient, the low efficiency shots, whatever. I know you all like analytics, so I'm trying to speak your language, but like that's not a high percentage shot for this team when they are capable of playing at like 1.2 or 1.3 points per possession. Bridges lofting threes with a hand in his face is not a good shot for this team. So, but when he gets the ball and he gets his shoulder in front of someone and he gets some leverage, he can go to the basket all day. And so, that is a good player who needs to play better. And Winston, for as great as he is, some of the turnovers you're just sitting there kind of shaking your head at. That they had 18 turnovers at home against Michigan, against a Michigan team that doesn't really play pressure defense. These are things where you kind of get a little stir crazy watching them because there's just wasted possessions. They're for a team that's this good to turn over the ball and get 25% of its possessions is pretty mind numbing. Because they are when they look good, they look so good, and when they look bad, it's just confounding.
Yeah. And that's what makes just looking at numbers when you're trying to get a feel for a team kind of misleading, because Indiana's guard play has been struggling all year long. It's been a little better the last few games, but I look at Cassius Winston's numbers and he's 5th in the country in assist rate and top 10 in 3-point percentage, and I'm like, he can come play for Indiana any day. But as you said,
right.
Some of those ups and downs obviously have led to some inconsistencies, and when your lead guard is up and down like that, it really makes it hard for your team to be consistent, and Indiana has certainly experienced that this year too.
Yeah, and he is a sophomore, and he's a 4-year player, so he's growing through growth. And Cassius Winston is an outstanding basketball player. I think he could be, an All-American candidate by his senior year. I think there are times right now where when he's really locked in, he looks like an All-American candidate. Sometimes right now,
yeah.
So he has that level. I think it's just kind of a matter of him turning the corner on his career, and I think it will happen. But there are some times where you scratch your head a little bit. And similarly to Bridges in the last 8 minutes, it's interesting that you saw that the last 8 minutes of that game were your framework for it, because that was Michigan's best 8 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
It was crazy impressive. Mo Wagner looks like Dirk, and the defense was locked down. And Xavier Simpson's defense, I think, for 40 minutes showed itself the most in the last 8 minutes of that game, where Cassius was just kind of, I don't know if it's fed up, but there's just sometimes when you get defended like that for 40 minutes, it shows in the last 10, and it did in that game.
It's also interesting. You kind of take a snapshot of where Indiana and Michigan State are at right now. And of course, for Michigan State, it kind of feels like the sky is falling because they've lost 3 games, total in the season. But this is a team that came in with legit national title expectations. And so people are a little bit concerned. And Indiana, after being so up and down for so long, we're on a 3-game winning streak against decent competition, and we're all feeling really good. So it's kind of funny, just, the change in perspective there, just based on the timing of when these two teams are playing. I'm curious, what's your impression of Indiana this year? I don't know how much you've gotten a chance to see them play, but what's your general impression of them coming in on Friday night?
I've only seen them in fits and bits a little bit, and the times that I have seen them, it seemed a little enigmatic to me, which is the product of having, some inexperienced players and a first-year coach and a lot going on and a lot of pressure and all that stuff. But I haven't watched enough of them to, draw any grand conclusions about, the way they play or anything like that. When I saw them earlier at times, I said, oh, all right, this looks like a team that's going to, I think I picked them like 11th in the league.
Yeah.
And when I saw them early, I said, well, okay, I'm feeling pretty good about that. And then I saw them later and I said, well, maybe this team finishes top 5. So I guess that goes into, I'm not sure what to make of them. I don't know. Are you confident? I would go back to you with the question and say, how confident are you night to night on which group shows up from the non-conference play?
Well, that's been the big question. And I would say probably 2 games ago, actually as recently as just Sunday, I had a bad feeling about the Northwestern game, simply because this team in particular, and really just the program in general, has not been good at stringing together consistent, focused efforts. And so I think I think Sunday was a really big step for the program because that's the third straight game where they've been really committed on the defensive end, really have played together, and seemed much more focused in terms of better shot selection, not turning the ball over as much. So I think that was a big step. Now the question is obviously, can they go do it on the road again against in a big time step up in terms of competition level? But it kind of feels like they've turned a bit of a corner. And, I hesitate to say that a little bit because I don't want to jinx it. And recent history has proven that sometimes with this team, when things seem like they're really good, something bad is around the corner. But it does feel like they're starting to play a little bit more the way Archie Miller has envisioned. And that's the formula for how they're going to win, because this isn't a good shooting team. But now that they're playing with a little bit of toughness and togetherness, it's given them a chance. And that's what gives me, we talked about last week, how this Michigan State game was just kind of a throwaway game. You don't expect to win. You're probably going to lose by 10 or 15, maybe more. You just want to be competitive. And now I think people are at least thinking, you know what, this is an interesting game. Indiana's got a chance if they go up there and actually shoot well. This could be a competitive game, and that was not the feeling by anybody, 10 days ago. So, in terms of that, I feel a lot better, than I did recently.
Well, something I think you'll have to ask yourself about Indiana going into this game is, how will it deal with, you need a certain mentality going into play this specific Michigan State team, because they're going to block 8 or 9 shots, and they are going to get in your head, and they're going to alter a lot of other shots. Jaren Jackson is a game changer for them defensively in the middle, and they have other guys who can go up and get blocked shots. So, you have to be able to play through. This was one of the most impressive things about Michigan's win is when State blocked their shots, and lit the fuse and Breslin and the place would get all crazy, Michigan didn't blink. They just kept doing their thing. They weren't scared of getting their shot blocked, and they weren't scared, they didn't start defaulting to shooting threes. They only attempted, I think, 16 threes in that game. Now, anyone who watches Michigan basketball knows that's an exceedingly low number. And at the same time, they just kept going they kept running their stuff. They kept going at the basket, and they missed 15 layups in that game. So, they could have won by more. They missed 15 layups, and a lot of it was shots being altered. A lot of it was guys looking over their shoulder. But to their credit, they kept going. And that's what you have to do against Michigan State. And when they have the big high-flying dunk, and when Jaren Jackson does something crazy on either end of the floor, you can't get shook. You got to just stay in the game. You got to go possession for possession, because I think Michigan State can get a little overworked sometimes. They can kind of overcook themselves into a little bit of a frenzy. You can go score. After there was a sequence in the first half, I thought that for a game that played out the way it did, it's hard to pick a moment in the first half of any game where you say that's a defining moment. But this one had one, and it went, Jaren Jackson blocked 2 huge block shots in one possession, right? So Breslin's all fired up, and people are hanging from the ceiling. It's all crazy. And then Jackson comes down, gets the ball into a post-up spot, spins around, dunks the ball. The place is now completely lost it. Michigan goes down. It runs its offense. They don't panic. They don't get hurried. They don't take the first shot that comes. They run their stuff. They get Mo Wagner in a wide-open 3, and he cans it. And he backpedals down the court, gives a little shush to the crowd, and that calms things. And I think that's where you saw, at that moment, I was like, Michigan State might make this a 15-point game in 2 minutes, But Michigan stayed about itself, and that's what you have to do against the team, especially at Breslin.
Yeah, well, and look, the big concern is Michigan is the best team in the country at defending 2-point field goals, and Indiana has not been a good 3-point shooting team, and their strength has been a very high 2-point field goal percentage. And so that battle of strength against strength is going to be important. And I think for Indiana, a spot where you wouldn't have thought they would have an advantage in a big road game like this is actually maybe turnovers, because Indiana's not turning it over as much, and they've been one of the best teams in Big Ten play at forcing turnovers, and that seems like it's been one of the biggest bugaboos for Michigan State this year, is just, they're giving up a lot of turnovers, and they're not forcing a ton themselves on defense. So hopefully, if Indiana cannot have a lot of those live ball turnovers they had in the past that would lead to runouts, that can help at least maybe prevent some of those bigger Michigan State runs. And if they can force a few themselves, get a few extra possessions and shots that way, maybe that can help them make up for the shots that are obviously going to be blocked and the advantage that Michigan State has down low. And then I think you just need your seniors to step up, guys like Robert Johnson and Colin Hartman, to step up and make big shots and calm things down. And I think Juwan Morgan's going to have to kind of play that Mo Wagner role, not the same kind of player, but give the team that confidence, kind of put him on his back in big moments, kind of like he did against Notre Dame. And if all those things happen, then maybe you've got a chance down the stretch. But obviously that's going to be a pretty tough task for Indiana, no matter how much Michigan State's struggling.
Yeah, and if those turnovers do come, you got to capitalize. That was the biggest thing Michigan did, is they scored something like 26 points off those Michigan State turnovers. And those are gifts, especially on the road. You gotta take whatever they give you. And if that's the case, especially if there's unforced turnovers, you have to make sure you value those possessions even more than you would maybe a typical possession. And Michigan State is also a little susceptible. I don't know how Indiana is on the offensive glass, but Michigan State has shown itself to be a little bit susceptible on the offensive glass. And Michigan, it was kind of a beat them at their own game situation. Michigan grabbed 11 offensive boards against State, and State grabbed 8 of their own. So that's a battle that Michigan never wins in this series. Yeah. But you can do that against this Michigan State team. So if that's something that Indiana can do, those are little ways that you can make a game against a really good team, either closer than it should be or close enough to go actually win it. Because if you can, you get those turnovers, you get a couple offensive boards, that can hinge a game.
Yep. Yeah, and Indiana's top 40 in the country in offensive rebounding percentage and 4th in the Big Ten. So it has been an area where they've succeeded this year, especially, Juwan Morgan, Zach McRoberts, and some guys off the bench have been pretty good at it too. So that'll certainly be a way that they can, help make up for the fact that they probably aren't going to shoot great from 3 because they haven't most of the year, and the fact that Michigan State's going to be challenging a lot of shots down low. Well, listen, Brennan, you've been really, really generous with your time, man. I appreciate it. My last question for you is just, how concerned are you about Michigan State long term? I mean, is this just kind of a midseason blip and you think they'll be fine and come tournament time, they'll be number 1 seed ready to roll and everybody's Final Four pick? Or do you see any signs that maybe there's something, inside of this team that's just not going to allow it to reach its potential?
Well, I would say more. I'm not panicking. I don't think there are any overwhelming issues that this team cannot overcome. I would like to see better guard play in terms of having confidence of what the team can do in March. But I do think they are going to fix a number of things. They can still be one of the best offensive and defensive teams in the country. I would like to kind of see them, kind of go back to their roots. I wrote this in a column yesterday that I think if this team kind of rededicates itself to the defensive side and rebounding, that everything else will kind of figure itself out a little bit, and you make yourself makes life a lot easier when you're not just trying to go and outgun teams. I think they started to look at themselves a little bit different during that big winning streak. They won 14 straight, and in the last 7 games of that stretch, they were averaging 99 points a game and shooting 58% from the field and 48% on threes. So you can start to get a little bit comfortable when you're playing at that level and everything is happening for you on offense. And then suddenly you get a team that wants to kick your teeth in on the defensive end, and it doesn't come easy, and you don't know how to respond because suddenly you're trying to outscore instead of stop the other team. That's how losses happen for, I think, a team of this caliber when it comes to Michigan State. So I do ultimately think that they will reestablish kind of the tenets of the program. And when that happens, then you're going to see what I think could probably be one of the best transition offenses in the country kick back into the highest tier. And when that happens, I think people are going to kind of be reminded probably that this is a team that could potentially win the national championship.
His name is Brendan Quinn. You can follow him on Twitter at BFQuinn and obviously read his work over at The Athletic to stay up to date on Michigan State and Michigan as we go through the rest of the season. Brendan, thank you so much for joining us again on Podcast on the Brink. Really appreciate your insight.
Anytime. Look forward to doing it again.
Yep. Sounds good. All right. So at the beginning of the episode, I told you about Blue Apron. And again, we have an affiliate relationship with them. So if you've been thinking about trying Blue Apron, go to InsideTheHall.com/Blue Apron. You can get $30 off of your first meal order, and we'll get a commission as well. So again, it's a great way to support the show, a great way to get started with Blue Apron at a discount and kind of give it a try. And in advance of doing this, I decided to try it out myself. My wife and I have talked about doing it, and so we finally decided to start doing it here in the new year. And I would say so far, so good. We've done 4 meals. I've enjoyed 4 of them. My wife, she didn't necessarily like the one that we had last night as much. We had a Cajun kale quiche, and she's just not a big quiche person, so that's really why. She actually said it tasted pretty good for a quiche, but she said in the future we shouldn't use our Blue Apron meals for a quiche, which I think is probably right. But some of the other meals that we had seared grass-fed steaks with sweet chili glazed vegetables. We had ancho orange chicken with kale rice and roasted carrots. And obviously it's great to, look at the menu, choose what you want to eat, and then you get this box. We get our orders on Friday afternoon. This box comes on Friday afternoon, and everything is in there. All the ingredients are portioned out correctly. There's really easy instructions. And so it makes cooking and preparing these meals a pretty simple process, and it's fun. And look, if you just want to have a good meal and eat it simply, Blue Apron is great. If you are kind of an amateur chef, and I would barely call myself an amateur chef. I mean, I enjoy cooking. I'm not that great at it, but I do like learning kind of new cooking techniques. And so that to me has been the most fun part about this. Like making the kale rice. Like that's not something I'd thought about before, but my young daughter, she's about 18 months old. She loves eating that rice. And so now, by going through and doing this, I learned how to do that. Now I can go make it on my own. So that's kind of been, a secondary or a tertiary bonus. So anyway, just give it a try. Check out InsideTheHall.com/Blue Apron. They've been around for a while, so, pretty trustworthy. The boxes with the meals come, really reliably. Everything in there has been fresh, has tasted really good, and they have a lot of great options. So you get a few options you can choose from. You can get them whatever day of the week that you want. So they really try and tailor the experience to you. They try to do it in a sustainable way, which is nice. So yeah, just that's my pitch. Give it a try. InsideTheHall.com/Blue Apron. And if you live anywhere near a Costco actually has a nice little gift certificate deal. I think for like $100 you can get $150 worth of Blue Apron meals, and so we did that, and so it was actually a way to get even better value for our money, and that still works with the $30 off that you get when you go to InsideTheHall.com/Blue Apron. So just a little pro tip there. All right, that's it. Give it a try, and when you do, let me know. Send me a note at Assembly Call or email me Jerod at assemblycall.com, and I'd love to know how it goes for you. InsideTheHall.com/Blue Apron. Thank you for listening to this episode of Podcast on the Brink. We always appreciate you being here. To get more from me and from Alex, visit assemblycall.com and insidethehall.com for complete coverage of Indiana University basketball. If you liked this episode, please consider sharing it with a friend or family member who loves IU basketball as much as you do. You can also support the show by leaving a rating and review on iTunes, which helps us get the word out to more IU fans like yourself. We will be back next week with a new episode. Until then, as always, go Hoosiers.